Good afternoon. Welcome to West Texas A&M University. I think we have one of our speakers not here, but hopefully Mr. Molberg will be coming soon. Let me give you free details, facts, introduction. My name is Syed Tariq Anwar. I'm a professor in marketing and international business. This is our fourth seminar. So basically, this series started in 2008 when the financial crisis happened, and these gentlemen on the stage, they were our speakers at the time. Then we revisited this situation, and we revisited again, Mr. Molberg is here. We revisited again, and basically financial crisis, this whole situation is still on the radar screen. It did not disappear. And as we all know in economic terms, bubbles are always temporary, and things may not go forever, and so it will improve. But a few comments here. It started in 2008. Today's speakers are Mr. Ware, Amarillo National Bank, Mr. Gary Molberg, President of Amarillo Chamber of Commerce, and Dr. Jim Owens is Professor of Finance. A few facts I would like to show you. This is Black Swan. The Black Swan basically is the impact of highly improbable. So financial crisis basically came out to be a black swan, and Nassim Taleb wrote this book. It's still heavily used in the business world. Google is also a very big black swan. Nobody could believe that Google will come out to be such a giant in terms of market value. Many people and many countries are forcing China to take responsibility, and basically they want China to boost the value of its currency. That is one of the issues which one of the speakers may address. Next year, 2011, this is our data, just showed up in Wall Street and Financial Times. It says, and I'm going to read from this statement, 15 developed countries, they may need or they require $10 trillion. $10 trillion they need to borrow. That's a pretty big amount. Foreign investors still use United States as a good haven. As of today, China has invested $870 billion in the US Treasuries, Washington DC. Why? Because US is still a very safe haven. Where do we place ourselves? The state of Texas had $8 billion deficit, then it reached to 12, then it reached to 18, and I was reading the data last week, it's already $25 billion. And I will let these speakers visit this situation. Chinese want to buy, and we were discussing with Mr. Ware, Chinese want to buy 1% of GM. GM's IPO will be out tomorrow or soon. Then on the other hand, Robert Zoellick, president of the World Bank, he said that maybe we need to go back to some kind of a gold standard. Big question mark. I don't understand that, how would it happen, but it is also debatable. The Obama administration has promised to pump in $600 billion more in the next 6 months. And then the President's Commission, bipartisan commission, Mr. Simpson and Mr. Bowles, they have requested that $4 trillion, we should have $4 trillion worth of cuts. I mean, I can go forever, but there's a huge amount of uncertainty, and there is also a huge amount of lot of good things happen in this country. And let me show you one thing. This is I don't use it too much. This is just a basic nano, and it shows that United States is still the #1 in R&D, research and development. I don't use it maybe when I travel, but it has massive amount of data. This is just a basic simple nano. So the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of countries are trying to compete, they're trying to get into the United States, but US is still the #1 economy in the world, although we do have problems. So at this time, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Ware, to talk about the Amarillos economy, and let's see what he says.
Thanks so much for having me here. As y'all are walking in, we left it's an economic pulse, and it's a report we put out every month. And the goal of the pulse is to kind of give our customers and people in our area better economic information so they can make better economic decisions. And we hope it helps people out as they make those decisions, and hopefully the information in it is pretty current and timely. And as you can tell, I'm just pretty much going to go off whatever the poll says. Amarillo's economy this fall is definitely improving. It's getting a lot stronger from where it was at the bottom of the recession, which started about September 2008. The most important driver to our economy is jobs, and this October, Amarillo had 2,900 more jobs than we did last October, and those were in all industries: agriculture, business, manufacturing, education, healthcare. We saw increases in job levels in all those, and that's so important to our area and such a good sign for the economy. Belle Helicopter and Owens Corning continue to grow or bring back the very important job, the manufacturing jobs we talk about. And then another thing we look at is the wages. Wages in Amarillo have held up better than most parts of the country. Over the last 8 years, they're up 17%. And during the recession, or starting in about 2007, wages are up 3% since then. And that's a very important thing just for the consumers and commerce in our area. And just to put comparable things on it, Lubbock's wages are down 1% since 2007, so that's good news for our area too. Retail sales are up 6% from last August and are flat year to date. Car dealers, they're having some problems. They're reporting really slow numbers this fall, but we are starting to hear some horror stories from some of our competition. We're hearing some really low loan rates, interest rates. We had really long maturities. We heard, I think, under 3% for 7 years. So while that is pretty much idiotic lending, hopefully that'll increase car sales. Construction in Amarillo has slowed down over the last couple of years, but we still have some big projects. Belle Helicopter continues to grow. And then big projects at the airport. You see some retail space going up and then convenience stores going up. So all these things combined kind of give you an idea of what we feel like the economy in Amarillo is really improving. Agriculture is a big part of our economy and something we follow really closely at the bank. And over the last, since about June, everybody in agriculture has seen, that they've been really enjoying it. Farmers, ranchers, dairymen, and feed yard operators are all having a good fall. The farmers' crops were strong this year due to well-timed moisture, and commodity prices are high. Feed yards are finally profitable. They had a dreadful 2 years, but starting about 6 months ago, feed yards started reporting profits, and that's real important for our area too. What we're seeing at the feed yards, though, is the profit margins are going to shrink over the next couple of months as these high commodity prices increase their input costs. Dairies are another important and growing part of our economy. I think south of here, we've seen a lot of growth in the dairy industry, and the dairymen, they're having a good fall. Milk production is up, and milk prices are up as well. And the dairies that survived the last 2 years are finally seeing some light, and now as bankers, what we look at, they're showing some strong equity in their borrowing basis, so that's going to give them good opportunities to grow and operate. One thing you're hearing about in the news all over, especially in the last couple of weeks, is inflation. And we look at that at a local level and also at the national level. But locally, we go out to the grocery stores and gas pumps and just kind of everywhere and do our own little inflation survey. Inflation in Amarillo is pretty flat. Over the last year, I think prices are only up 0.4%. So low inflation is good for everybody. But you keep hearing that, and then on the national level, they're saying inflation is low. But as far as that sticking around, the low inflation, that's pretty unreasonable. Higher inflation expectations are all around, and inflation's bound to hit, especially as this economy turns and if these interest rates stay low, inflation's going to come. And those higher inflation expectations will kind of cook into inflation in the near term. So I think we're going to start seeing a little more inflation as the winter comes along, and especially into the spring. And one thing I think we're going to start seeing is inflation in food. As these commodity prices really increased over the last couple months, that's going to go down to the consumer, probably starting sometime this winter. So we talked about the job growth in Amarillo and then some inflation in Amarillo. And then that's kind of where we go into another big thing that's going on in the news and banking is what the Federal Reserve's been doing the last couple of weeks. And since the Fed's dual mandate is to keep inflation low and employment high, they've kind of, the news is acting like the Fed has wandered from their mandate, but in a sense I don't really think they have. What kind of happened at the start of the recession, they already lowered the interest rates to zero using their regular ways, and that's when they tweaked the overnight Fed funds rate, and that didn't really get anything going. So what Chairman Bernanke and the Fed did, they went to another option, and it's called quantitative easing. And what they're doing is just going out farther term and just medium term treasuries and just starting to buy those. And what this will do, it drives up the quantity demanded and shrinks the quantity supplied, which drives up the price and lowers the yield. And what they're trying to do, in a sense, is just lower borrowing costs for all borrowers, whether it's individuals, corporations, governments, everything. And they think by lowering the cost of capital, that'll increase the asset prices and increase their operating expenses, decrease their operating expenses. The Fed has realized that they can't kickstart the economy alone, so now they're going, like I said, to lower the cost of capital and increase stock prices. And this will allow companies to find their optimal capital structure. And what the optimal capital structure will do, it'll set them up for growth. Right now, tweaking with capital structure, it kind of artificially inflates these stock prices. But I think that's kind of what the Fed is trying to do, is put an artificial floor in the stock prices and even increase them, just to kind of get confidence going. Because the one thing that will get the economy going again is confidence, whether it's corporations or consumers. So once we start seeing that confidence increase, whether it's through the more efficient operations or higher stock prices, then we'll really see this economy take off. Another thing Professor Anwar wanted me to talk about was banking overall, but I don't know that much about banking nationally, so I'll just stick to banking in Amarillo and Canyon and the Panhandle. And one thing we've seen, banks in this area, especially the Panhandle, have done just fine. In fact, they've grown. They've outperformed the national banks on so many levels, it's kind of hard to compare them. But I think that goes to show you how strong our area's economy is, and also what good bankers we have in banks. And then most importantly, the customers. A lot of customers here are real risk averse. They don't borrow whatever they can get their hands on. They borrow exactly what they need. And when they see the recession coming, they slow down on their borrowing. They pay down their debt as fast as possible. So it's not so much strong banks that have kind of carried the area through this recession. It's the consumer. It's everybody here. I mean, it's the good people of the Panhandle who have really helped keep us isolated in this recession. Banks around here have kept their same very conservative loan standards throughout, and they didn't go out to other markets they didn't understand. A lot of these bank failures you're seeing are banks that were in one part of the country, and then they went out to a different part of the country because there was a certain kind of loan demand, whether it's commercial or residential real estate. And that's when you get in trouble, is when you get into markets that you don't understand. At our bank, our deposits are mostly flat with last year, and loan demand, it's ticking up a little bit. The loan competition, it's getting more and more intense out there, and that'll hopefully keep interest rates low for borrowers around here too. Consumer loans have gone down about 8% over the last year, but again, I think that's because the people in our area really kind of slow things down when they know the recession is going on, and if they're uncertain whether the recession is going to end. In our mortgage lending department, 2/3 of the activity over the last year has been refinance. A lot of people aren't going out there buying new homes, they're just refinancing what they have at these lower interest rates, and that's going to mean that we're not going to see either a rise or drop in house prices. Past due loans at our bank are exactly flat last year, and loan losses are about half of what they were last year, and we have less non-accrual loans on our books. So that means a lot of our customers, their conditions are improving. They're able to pay down their debt, they're borrowing less, and just their operations are improving. So when that gets going and then they start hiring new jobs, that's why we think the economy is on a sustained path for growth over the next 6 months. Just when we get up and talk about these things, you can throw out all the numbers and give all the stats, but I think what it really boils down to is the people in this part of the country. They're good, hardworking people with high morals, high business ethics, and they really look out for each other. And I think that's the one thing that isolated us in this recession. It is just the good nature of the people over here, and it's something to be very proud of. Another thing that really helps out our economy is we have a strong Chamber of Commerce who's really beneficial to Amarillo and Canyon's business, and very importantly, you got to give them a lot of credit, is our Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. They're the ones who brought in a lot of these manufacturing jobs, whether it's, most of it is Belle Helicopter, but also other manufacturing jobs in our area. I think we have more than twice the number of manufacturing jobs that Lubbock, Amdillin, and Odessa have, and that's important. That sets us up for long-term growth. So just in closing, as far as Amarillo's economy is concerned. It's improving. It feels a lot better out there. There's a lot more confidence out there. I know there's a lot of negative news going on about the national economy, but people around here tend to ignore that kind of thing and just get going with their lives. And that's one reason we're going to come out of this recession a lot stronger than other parts of this country. Thank you.
Our second speaker, Mr. Gary Molberg from Amarillo Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much. Were you worried I was going to show up? I kind of got lost. There's a lot of kids out there running around. Almost hit a couple of them coming in, so because I knew I was running late. So I appreciate you having me here today, and Pat, thanks for the kind words of the chamber. You know, when I look around, I kind of give you my background. I had 25 years in banking, and the last 9 years I had the pleasure of working at Amarillo National Bank as their marketing director, and now I've been at the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce about 13 years. I was calling him Warden. He's not Warden anymore, but I see him out there. But I tell you what, I found out, and one thing I do every morning is turn off the national news. I'm not going to watch it because Amarillo, you know, one of the old sayings I've heard in the banking business, I echo it now that I'm a chamber guy and run the chamber in Amarillo, is we never hit the highs of the highs or the lows of the lows of Amarillo. We do our own thing here and we set our own goals. And so I'm very excited. I couldn't think of a better chamber to be president of than the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce. There's several factors, in my opinion, that make the Amarillo economy so strong. Not only the Amarillo economy, but the entire Panhandle economy. And I think Pat touched on a little bit. He talked a little bit about the banking business. But one thing I found out when I was in banking, I think people will agree, it's very competitive, Pat. It's extremely competitive, like a lot of our businesses are. And let me tell you what, that is so positive for our economy. They're competitive, but they're conservative, and I think that's just so vitally important. You saw, in fact, Amarillo National Bank was one of the banks, when the stimulus plan came out, they turned down the money. Now, what a great statement for the city of Amarillo, entire Panhandle, and other banks follow suit. You know, they're competitive, they do business properly, and I think that makes for just a great business atmosphere. We're very diversified, not only in Amarillo and the entire economy, and along with being competitive, we're very pro-business. You know, I roll that back on some of the events. He was saying the successes we have at the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce. Well, the reason we're successful is because of the pro-business atmosphere and the wonderful businesses we have in Amarillo and the economy. We put on certain events no chamber can survive by membership dues alone. I put on non-dues revenue events. One of the biggest ones I put on is a business connection where businesses will come into the Civic Center and buy a booth, and we'll have 8,000 to 10,000 people come by. Well, listen to what I'm saying here. Our business connection that we have in Amarillo, Texas, is as large as the business connection Dallas Chamber of Commerce puts on. That's a pro-business atmosphere. That's people marketing what they have and networking, and that's what it's all about. You know, we take that, and I've kind of taken that philosophy when I came into the chamber. Pat talked a little bit about AEDC. Darn right, that's been a huge asset. I think the forefathers of Amarillo and the Panhandle, if you roll back the clock, decided that for Amarillo to have the growth and to get where they need to go, they need to become very diversified. You know, agriculture's been a big industry here. You know, there's no cattle market, obviously a big industry here. But then they brought AEDC, and they attracted businesses from all around. He touched about the Belle Helicopter plant. We have 1,200 jobs that have an average of $75,000 a year a job, plus looking at probably a 400 or 500 job growth in the next couple of years. That's big business for Amarillo. Pantex, our nuclear weapons plant out there, it employs 3,400 people, and I'm sure that average salary pat's around $70,000 a year. The amount of money that puts in our economy is unbelievable. And I also found out the thing that really helps Amarillo, while we can draw so well there, another reason why our economy is so strong, is obviously the interstate, I-40 and I-27. We have a lot of traffic goes up and down. We have some people say we're nothing but a big truck stop. Well, let me tell you something, those trucks, they spend a lot of money in our economy. We're happy to have them. A lot of good things happen. We have some restaurant chains up and down I-40 that lead restaurant chains throughout the United States are on the top 10 of restaurants, simply because of that traffic they draw in. So there's so many positives that happen in Amarillo, and we're going to use those things that are available to us to expand on that. When I talked about the surrounding economy, I meet with area chamber presidents throughout the Panhandle. There's about 15 of us in a group that's called PACE, Panhandle Area Chamber of Commerce Executives. I invite them to come down to Amarillo. Those chamber presidents will sit in together in a meeting and we'll discuss what's going on in our cities, because these surrounding cities are so important to the economy of Amarillo. A lot of these people come into Amarillo, they buy vehicles there, they do our medical services there, and they shop our stores and they shop our malls and they spend a bunch of money there. Well, one of the reasons, programs that we started up, and I got with the Amarillo Globe News, when we heard about the economy making a turn, that things were not good out there, we started a program this year that's called Shop Smart, Shop Local. That encourages the people in the Panhandle to do their business locally, shop locally, spend your money there. Why is that important? That's sales tax dollars. These same citizens, we tell people who went on that pledge, if they have an emergency at their house and they need a police officer at their house in minutes of time, the same time you're spending that money outside, that's how wages are paid for the city. That's how we pay for you picking up your trash. We talk about, last census, the newspaper did a study. If all the people that do business online outside of Amarillo, an Amarillo market, if just 1% of that business is not done outside Amarillo, but it's done in Amarillo proper, we're talking about 15 police officers' salary. That's pretty, when you put on that perspective, that's a lot of money. So it's very important to do business local and keep the business local like that. You know, some of the statistics when we look, like I said, I've been at the chamber for 13 years now as president. And it's kind of funny, we were talking about some statistics that you just gave, how bad the economy is and how things are tough out there. Well, my 13 year, this year was my second best year ever at the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce. We did things and took a progressive approach with the pro-business community. We put in a healthcare plan at our chamber here. You know, what's one of the things that's just very, very important in the United States is healthcare. We hear nothing but the rising costs. And part of that is the uninsured, people that are uninsured do not have healthcare. So we took an aggressive approach with United Healthcare, the provider for the chamber. We started a plan and we offered to people that were chamber members that if you become a member of the chamber, or if you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, we'll give you a discount on your health care insurance of 7%. And currently, we started that program a year ago. That ended up in 50 new members for the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce, plus we have over 1,000 people that are insured now with health care that were not insured before. So that's some of the approaches that we take that we can offer benefits to our members. And one of the things I always say is, you know, take an active approach. Well, I tell people when they join the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce, you know, your dues are $175 and $5 for each full-time employee. Is the value there? Well, if you participate and get involved, your value is easily there. I found that out when I was at the bank, because I was very active with the chamber, and I got a lot of business for the bank through my activities with the chamber. And we encourage businesses when they come and they get involved that good things will happen. I think that's in any business. You got to be very active in those approaches. Along with that Shop Smart, Shop Local, we're in the process now. I've been in the newspaper and Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, and we're going to have a CEO meeting that will be coming up in about a couple of weeks, and we're going to take that one step further. Now we're going to bring out a program that is businesses shop with businesses. In other words, we want the people to shop locally and spend their dollars there, but we're talking about businesses too. This business over here, don't go outside of Amarillo to buy supplies if there's somebody in Amarillo or the Panhandle that can provide that product for you. So we're going to take that another step. You'll be hearing that business to business in the near future. One thing, the report we just got, the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation just put out, is Amarillo was ranked number 16 as one of the best performing cities in the United States. Now that's pretty strong statement right there. We moved up a number of places on that. But I think that attributes to so many factors, Pat, like you touched on, a very strong banking atmosphere, a very pro-business mindset, and just people do business right. I think it's very important. Like I said before, the banks are conservative here, yet competitive, and so we don't get into the binds that so many people got upside down in the home loans and everything. They don't take that aggressive approach. They take the proper approach and so forth. I always heard in the banking business, a lot of people don't believe this. A lot of times bankers doing you your best favor when they tell you no. They tell you the best thing they can tell you is no, and that's happened many times. So we're very proud. The Amarillo economy, in my opinion, the numbers are tracking up there, and Pat kind of touched on that to the economic pulse. The numbers are strong. We're going to take the positive approach. We're going to continue to market Amarillo and the surrounding panhandles. I'll continue to meet with the surrounding panels. In fact, that Shop Smart Shop local program, we offer those to the surrounding communities, and they've taken that program to their own communities, and they're promoting it like that. So we're very excited what's going on. As far as the future holds, we're going to be very positive about it. We think things will be very strong. And I think that's all I have, but I appreciate you having me.
Okay, our last speaker, Professor Owens. There are some chairs in the front row. You guys can come.
I don't spit that bad. Okay, I get to be the cold water. Get to be my age, things start falling off, so I'm sure this is gluing me back together. Let me start by showing you, most of you remember from your math class, a sine wave. This is a financial sine wave. Okay? Starts with optimism, goes through excitement, thrill, euphoria. God, am I smart. Then it hits anxiety. Well, this is a temporary setback. I'm a long-term investor. Then it goes into denial, fear, desperation, panic, finally ends up in pure despondency. Then starts back out with depression, hope, relief, and back to optimism. This is pretty much what we're going through. Now, why raise the sine wave? Anybody who saw the stock market yesterday can't believe your previous two speakers, not if you're heavily invested. We dropped 223, ended up down 180. That was a rough one. Right? And it's not unusual. We're seeing these kinds of changes constantly. For those who've been following the news in the last few days, President Obama was not well greeted at the G20 Economic Conference. He is not being well handled at the European Economic Conference. Part of the problem is something that Pat referred to, and that is quantitative easing. We're in our second stage, QE2, the $600 billion. This morning, the New York Fed bought back $12.84 billion worth of long-term treasuries. The problem from the perspective of international, and that's my area, is that most of that $600 billion is probably going to leak overseas. We're using it to buy goods, and we're jamming the inflation into other countries. That's why they were unhappy with Mr. Obama and with our economic policies. China's inflation this year, they prefer 3% max, is already at 4.4 and climbing. They've raised their interest rates last month for the first time since 2007. The thought is they're going to raise them again. That's one of the reasons the market hammered yesterday. Is all of a sudden we're looking up and saying China may start to slow down. And you have to recognize that is the second largest economy on the face of the earth behind ours. They are ahead of Japan now. China is now number 2 and growing fast. But with growth comes inflation. With inflation comes concerns of price increases locally, and the fear is they may start putting the brakes on that economy. And if they do, things they sell us get more expensive, things they buy from us become less obvious. There is a second group of countries that are cold water. They are in the European Commission. They go by the name of pigs. I didn't invent it. It is Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain are 4 members of the Eurozone. Greece, the G of the pigs, has already been bailed out. Ireland, the I of the pigs, is under intense pressure today to accept a bailout. Their banks are totally underwater. The government stepped in and backed them, and they don't have the money to cover the debt. If you think the housing inflation in Las Vegas was excessive, you should see the property bubble Ireland just went through. And when it burst, it wiped out virtually all the Irish banks. They are being bailed out by their government. Their government doesn't have the money. So they are being effectively encouraged strongly by the European Union, the Eurozone Commission, and the International Monetary Fund to accept a bailout. Now, obviously, politically, if you are their version of the Prime Minister, their Finance Minister, that's sort of the end of your career. Let's be honest. The sanctions that will be imposed in the event of a bailout will be very severe. For example, when Greece was bailed out, they jumped their value-added tax rate from 19 to 24%. That's a bite. They're telling Ireland the same thing. Ireland agreed with its unions, we will not cut jobs. One of the conditions of the bailout was we're going to renege on that agreement. Jobs will be cut. Basically, what's happening in Europe, and it's a contagion that is spreading, thus the P for Portugal, the fear is they are next, and then finally Spain. The fear is that as this contagion spreads, the restrictions you have to put on these countries to cut spending and raise taxes are very, very severe to pay back that debt, which will diminish the ability of those economies to absorb goods that the rest of us produce. Right? For example, Ireland's corporate tax rate is 12% right now. That's how they draw people in. The thought is, if they are forced to accept these bailout provisions, that will more than double. So if you just located your plant in Ireland to get a nice low corporate tax rate, that deal just ended. You're now stuck with 20+%. So you can see why the Irish are resisting. But the European Union and the Eurozone Commission basically is saying, we cannot have a bankrupt member of the Eurozone. That's unacceptable. Otherwise, the euro is in danger, and therefore the whole idea of a common currency and a common economy is in danger. So they will accept the agreement. We thought last night during the Brussels meeting of 12 that it would be finalized. It is not. As of this morning, they have agreed there will be a 3 to 4 day consultation between the Eurozone Commission, Ireland, and the International Monetary Fund. We should know by Friday the conditions of the bailout. The thought is when they have one, Portugal's next. Now, I don't like to use numbers, but let me tell you just a little bit about the pigs in brief, because I want to make a point. One is that the P, Portugal, the government debt is 76% of their gross domestic product. They owe 3/4 of what they produce. Okay? Their deficit is about, at the moment, 9% of GDP. The I of the pigs has a 65% debt as a percentage of the gross domestic product. The G of the pigs, Greece, has 126.8%. That's upside down. When you owe 126% of what you produce, you've got a problem. Greece is not going to get out of the water for a long time. Spain, which is the healthiest of the pigs, has a 53.2% government debt as a percentage of GDP. The United States, depending on how you count the debt, has a 93% debt of GDP or a 64%. If you don't count Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, if those are not considered debts, and in fact they are because we've already spent the money, right? And I hope all of you get really good jobs because I'm counting on my share. I'm drawing some and I'm intending to enjoy it for a long time. So you need to become very well gainfully employed. It's one of the reasons I work hard in my classes. I encourage my good faculty members, train them well. They need the jobs because I need the money. But if you don't count those three, and I think you should, but if you don't, we have 64% debt to gross domestic product. In the Eurozone, the United States would be considered a candidate for a bailout. Now there's a sobering thought. Now why is that happening and what can in effect the U.S. do about it? One is some of the issues that Pat and Gary have raised. That is, we've got to continue to try to grow. We've got to continue to create new jobs, new products, etc. The other issue very much is not only as Amarillo, but nationally. We've got to find a way to cut back these expenditures. Whether you call it reducing the loans or cutting the expense, it's the same game. It's all the same coin. What is happening is we are passing right now our borrowing cost to cover excess spending onto other nations and onto future generations. At some point, that comes home to roost. The reason I talk about the Eurozone countries, the pigs, is we have felt ourselves to be above all this. We're not. We're in the same economic situation they are. It's just we don't have a Germany staring us down and saying, you will take a bailout. You will not endanger the rest of us. We stand alone. So we can in effect ignore it for a while, but it's still there. And as a consequence of that, we need to be very supportive of programs, as heinous as they may be, to cut expenses and get the revenue up. Whether it's through productivity or higher tax rates, whatever it takes. But these debts have got to be paid down. Otherwise, there will come a day of reckoning, and it will be an exceedingly painful period. You can see what's happening in those other countries. And we are, by virtue of being a reserve currency, we're in a position nobody's going to tell us, here's what you got to do and when. But what will happen is, from a low interest rate, we will vault to a very high interest rate environment. And it will cut off productive capacity. That we don't want to have happen. We need to be willing to get a hold of this and keep these taxes low, keep the interest rates low. So it's the only way we're going to come out of it. But if you've been watching it lately, it's been kind of fun to observe. But for those who were curious, yesterday's market was largely driven by those two events. China's higher reported inflation in the pig group, and particularly the Irish member of that group. Right? You're going to see a lot more of this in the days ahead. So get ready for more volatility in the U.S. market. What happened was when China announced that, Shanghai market dropped 4% that day. By the time it got to Europe and we found out about the Irish problems, all of the European markets, particularly the Frankfurt market and the French market, all went down 3%. Right, so we went 4.4 down to 3. It hit the U.S. We went down 1.6. Well, the only difference is the scale, the size of the numbers. Right, if you've got 11,000 on the Dow Industrial versus a CAC or a DAC in Europe of 4,000 or 5,000, basically we all took the same hit globally. Right? So that news directly came right into our markets. What we do goes into theirs, what they do comes into ours. Right? We are that linked right now. Literally, I can get up at 4 a.m., check the Shanghai market, and I can tell you pretty much what the U.S. market's going to do today. Right? Also, somebody mentioned about, for in closing, about the GM offering. It's kind of fun for those of us in finance. GM this morning announced they are increasing the size of the common stock offering by 1/4 to meet excess demand. This is stock being sold by a bankrupt company owned by the U.S. government. Okay? There's an interesting thought, that we are so desperate for possible growing investments that GM is able to, a bankrupt company is able to sell stock at a price higher than they initially thought in a quantity of 125% of the original amount. If you think the world is not slightly financially nuts, you haven't been watching.
Why is it for most Americans and our lawmakers that they don't want to take that big bite and say higher taxes, that they can't balance the budget with that?
Same reason the two Irish men don't want to take it. You're out of business. You're on a new career track. They just do not have the courage to stand up and do it because they know they're going to be voted out. It's going to be unpopular. Because it's going to be painful. And people don't like to lose their jobs. Truly, the Irish situation has been drug on for days because of the self-interest of two people, a prime minister and a finance minister. That's what's holding it back. Otherwise, we'd have settled this thing last week. But these guys are both dragging their feet because they don't have a job when this is done.
Where are we at on your slide?
I would put us partway down the downslide. We're not at despondency, but we went way past I'm a long-term investor. I'm hoping we're starting to come back out of it in the U.S. I think we've gone through the worst, but we're by no means back where we were in terms of general optimism.
If we don't address this long-term debt, what's the ultimate price we'll pay?
You're going to be about 3 generations from now, we'll still be paying it. You're just going to keep compounding it to where it becomes unbearable. At which point, you move the decimal points and everything over 2 places and start again. It's the only solution. You go to hyperinflation, and we don't want to go there. Others? Sir?
My concern with the region's economy is that there are like these opposite views. The local perspective, very good, and
The global.
national perspective is very worrying. And I see that I don't think the region is prepared for what is coming next. I think this good situation is kind of explained by the isolation of the region, but it's not gonna be like that in upcoming years. So what can the region do to be prepared for the globalization? I think we cannot keep ourselves isolated. It's not gonna happen. So.
Well, I think Pat mentioned one of them is when the housing boom started, we didn't participate. And let's be honest, I mean, some of us were insanely jealous. I've got academic colleagues I went to school with who bought houses in Seattle and sold them for 3 times the price. They were smart enough to get out on the peak right before the Dreamliner decided to crash in Laredo. For those who weren't watching the news, they had to crash land the Dreamliner in Laredo, Texas this week because the cockpit caught on fire. All right, that's Boeing's new dream plane. That's supposed to solve all the problems. Life is not good in the real estate market in Seattle right now. That's a little tough. But basically, I was jealous of those people, but by the same token, because my house certainly hasn't gone up 3 times, the reward has been, I haven't had the downturn. And I think Pat and Gary's comments are valid. It's a different kind of business community. The isolation does help, but we haven't done the euphoria thing.
What I see is that the region depends very depending on the government economy. I mean, the Belle Helicopters or the subsidized agriculture, you know. Actually, the money coming here is coming from the government Well,
And wealth redistribution, yeah.
if the government will face harder times in the future, we're gonna feel it. So what can we do? I mean, we cannot keep ourselves isolated. That's my concern.
And I see your concern, but the issue again is if you look at our two primary defense related ones, the Pantex and Belle Helicopter, the money's gonna keep flowing. We're disassembling bombs now. I mean, we're the only place in the world that can take them back apart. We're taking apart Russian bombs. You know, the nuclear weapons. We may build a few, but we're spending most of our money now on disassembling. And that's not going to stop. There's a lot of that going on. And then I think in terms of Belle Helicopter, my daughter just returned from Iraq from a tour of duty over there. Believe me, those people are not giving up their Ospreys. You know, you've got a military, and before the government gets too proud, you got to remember you armed them. But don't tell them they can't have their Ospreys. They want those planes.
Gary,
They're
would you like to
magical.
comment?
Well, I was just talking to some folks, I don't know if this is on here, but, really on, but talking to some folks out at Belle Helicopter, and they're just in the process right now of signing a new contract with the Army. They've had the Marines before, so they've been expanded. They're, in the past, I think, I can't take the exact number of Ospreys they produce, but that workload is on the uprise increase. So there's some really good news there. And just like Dr. Owens said, Pantex here to stay, they have a long-term contract, and there's a lot of bombs out there they have to dismantle. There's plenty of work to do. In fact, they're looking at some additional missions out there that might expand. I'd ask Dr. Owens, you know, what we're hearing out there is, I want these kids to work too, so I'm right there with you on that Social Security, so I like that, but we're part of the baby boomers. And the word I hear, I think, be of interest to them. Why don't you address a little bit how important the workforce is, not only in the pandemic throughout, but beside that, I understand the baby boomers in the next 10 years, 50% of the workforce, I've heard that number, is going to retire. Might address that, what that'll mean for these kids out there.
Just to be absolutely blunt, you are going into the greatest job market anyone has ever seen. All of us are going to bail out. Honestly. I am on the front edge of the baby boom. I'm 68. All right? And I'm at the university because I want to be part of when the business school gets AACSB accreditation. Otherwise, I would have bailed a couple years ago. But, and I came when we didn't have it, and I want to be here when we get it. So it's selfish. But the reality is there is going to be a massive number of people going into retirement in the next 5 years. And you've got a job market that is beyond imagination because those spots have to be filled. The other thing you have going, as much as I like to tease you about it, and please quit doing it on the highway, is technology. Most of you have grown up with these things where you can text and talk and walk at the same time. None particularly well simultaneously, but you can do it. The point being that you are moving into an environment that is highly technological and you've grown up with it. Most of us who are leaving adapted to it. Right? We've learned to do it, but we're not terribly good at it. Most of you are at an age where you grow up with computers, you're very, very good at them. What I think you're going to see is not only the job market opening up, but they're going to be much more pleasant jobs because they're going to be much more technologically driven. I was at the doctor's office yesterday again, and he walks around with an iPad that is on a wireless server to his office, so he just clicks it and up comes all my records. When he does something, he doesn't write down what he did. He clicks a selection menu and then checks the box. So it's less than 10 seconds. Then he pulled out his iPhone and he said, by the way, if you get hurt, have them call me. I can wirelessly connect through my iPhone and get your records. That is an amazing technology. All of you are going into that world knowing how that stuff works, which means that jobs are going to be fantastic. They truly are. They're just, you cannot imagine how many of us are bailing out. Now, by the same token, I would encourage more of you to get into healthcare and geriatric care quickly.
Let me ask one question to Mr. Molberg. So what do you have in the next 5-6 years? Any new companies coming to Amarillo? And to Pat, how you guys as a banker, do you plan, do you discuss these things in your company? So both of you, if you could answer.
Oh, every day we see new opportunities coming into Amarillo, and I kind of address that in one aspect. Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, that's why they get that half-cent of the sales tax, because they're out there traveling all over the country, all over trying to bring in new industry to Amarillo. We have some real positives in Amarillo that a lot of other places do not have. You know, there's state sales tax and a lot of, or state employment tax in those, and we don't have union presence in Amarillo, so that's very attractive to a lot of these companies. But they're out there marketing continuously, and you know, as long as we have you know, the rankings, the pro-business atmosphere that we have in Amarillo and the Panhandle, in my opinion, as long as we continue to have the rail service, we continue to have I-40 and I-27, we have two interstates interlock Amarillo, and we have businesses that come here and do business anywhere in the United States, we have a real plus over a lot of the markets, and so that's a drawing force there. So I see some very positives on that.
And what Gary's saying, one thing at the bank is the bank grows as much as Amarillo grows, and I think Amarillo is set up for a tremendous amount of growth. One thing we always talk about the bank is different opportunities, and one of our advantages at our bank is we're closely held, which gives us a lot of flexibility to move. If we see a downturn coming, we can really slow things down and then just realize that earnings aren't going to be as strong. But when growth opportunities arise, we can really get after it and go out there and hustle that new business and hopefully make it a better atmosphere and better business environment for those businesses to come to our area. So we think in the next 3 or 4 years, Amarillo is going to end up being, you know, the best looking girl at the dance, and a lot of people in this country are starting to look this way and move here. You see a lot of different license plates from different parts of the country all around, and you wonder if they're staying here just passing through, but it seems like they're starting to say a lot of people are starting to move here because it is such a business-friendly place to live.
Landon, do you have a question?
I have 2 questions. First, Mr. Ware, are there any new regulations that affected the way your lending practices? If so, what's negative or positive? And then afterwards, Mr. Owens, you said that America has no one breathing down their neck, telling them what to do. How long do you think it's safe to go on doing that before the rest of the world decides they can send that system?
As far as the regulations goes, yeah, the new finance bill is just, it's an avalanche of regulations. But the thing about it is there's so much of it, we think we can, you know, just kind of wander through it and still make it easy for the customers to get loans. So that's the one thing we're worried about, is it's going to make it nearly impossible for a customer to get a loan or for a bank to even give out that loan if the government's going to tell us who we have to lend to. So there's been so much regulation, we think it's just going to be business as usual because no one's going to be able to absorb the amount that's coming at us. So hopefully it'll be business as usual. We'll see some smaller things on the retail side of banking, but nothing on the commercial side.
Just to add to that, since I've had the fortune of teaching bank school, the Dodd-Frank omnibus banking bill that was passed is 2,300 pages. There are no regulations in it. That is to set up the agencies that will set up the regulations. And then we change control this year of the House. I don't see any regulations that are going to affect him for a long time. I don't think we're going to get them written. I really don't. We're going to wander around and argue about this. In 5 years from now, we're still going to be wondering, when are we going to work on this? An omnibus bill of 2,300 pages that doesn't really do anything tells you what's going on. It's out of control. I mean, so I think the banks would be allowed to pretty much do their own thing. We're going to go back to self-policing under this umbrella that we're going to someday come do something. In terms of when are they going to come after us, We are still the reserve currency. China holds about just under $1 trillion worth of our debt, but that's less than 10% of the outstanding. So they're not going to tell anybody. Plus, which fact, they got to sell those goods to somebody, and we are the best buyers. Why would you destroy your own customer? That would make no sense. So it's in their best interest that we stay happy and healthy. So they would be the only possible player.
That's not exactly what I meant. I meant like if G20.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. The only sad part this year was I felt to some degree sorry for Mr. Obama because of the embarrassment. Because I think he had thought he would be treated with more respect, and should probably have been, but that's up to them.
One last question. How much international interest is Amarillo getting?
Oh, I see a lot of international, because part of that's the Amarillo Economic Development we talked about. I mean, we just had a company, I think out of Germany, one of the largest, that just came in out of Germany. We brought them there, and I think this was their second location in the United States. So the AEDC is working outside the United States. They work in the world market, for opportunities out there. And if I could talk, you talked about the Amarillo economy, and I think these folks up here will agree with me. Well, we can have the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation out there trying to go out and bring business to Amarillo. If we don't have a good workforce, it doesn't matter what they throw at them, we're not going to get it. So that's always tied. And so I think that's a real concern, not only the Amarillo Chamber, but the entire city of Amarillo. And that's part of the 2020 program you've probably heard about that we're addressing. We talk about Amarillo right now has the lowest unemployment in the state of Texas. We're a little above 5% unemployment rate right now. But yet the Texas Workforce Solutions or Workforce Commission, they'll sit there and put on a job fair, and we have more people than we've ever had at a job fair. It doesn't mean people aren't working, they're working at jobs they don't like. They're trying to improve out there. That continuously happens. But along with what you folks are doing here, I applaud you, because a very small percentage of our high school graduates continue on to get a college degree. And like Dr. Owens said, there's going to be great opportunities for you, but we can't leave that other sector out. Not everybody's geared for a college education. The technical skills have to be filled for us to continue to do what we're doing, and all the other jobs are out there. It takes the whole package, you might say, for us to be successful. So we're addressing a lot of these issues through the 2020 program to have a good, strong workforce. So as AEDC goes out there and draws a lot of these jobs in, that we'll have the manpower to take care of those. So that's very important to the Amarillo economy and the entire panhandle, I feel like.
Before we adjourn, I just want to show you this thing. This just came yesterday. This is Chairman Mao. That's what Dr. Owens was talking about. That Chinese, they have the money to buy more companies now. We teach international business, and I think it's a good sign. Who knows, some of the Chinese companies will be coming here. I mean, this just came yesterday. And so imagine what would happen in case if there is no investment coming to the US. So US will continue to be the main receiver of all the money, all the foreign direct investment. Before we conclude, I just want to make sure that we recognize some people. Paul Simpson is sitting over there. He's our WT graduate, and he's assistant to Mr. Thornberry, Congressman Thornberry's office. And I just want to thank many of you who came from Amarillo. To come to Canyon, it takes a long time and to spend a couple of hours. And these kind of seminars, forums are very important to share information. Pat's comments are excellent in terms of the largest bank in Amarillo. Mr. Gary Molberg's comments, which way we want to go in the next 5 years. And Dr. Owens, at a macro level, he talked about the pigs. I mean, I did not know about this agronom thing, pigs. Pigs is growing pretty fast, and it's a very big problem in the European Union. But I hope in maybe next year we will bring these speakers again back, and we will do our series number 5. Because it's still on the radar screen, it will continue to be, although US will continue to be one of the most important economies, or maybe in many areas the most important economies in the world. But let's give a hand to our speakers, and we thank you for your participation. We'll see you next time.